Good afternoon, everybody. It's about that time that we get started. Welcome, everyone, to the League of Women Voters of Arizona's third in series, and we hope to have many more of these, of virtual events. This is part of our effort of advocacy and action, making democracy work. Today, our event is hosted by the League of Women Voters of Arizona, and we are live on Facebook. Those of you who are watching us on Facebook, thank you and welcome to this presentation. Today is Earth Day, and in reflection of where we are with this one planet, one Earth that we have, we are going to focus on water, the next most, always the most valuable source for our life. And we are going to hear from experts on water management in Arizona. As we all know acutely, water in Arizona is such a precious commodity. And to that end, I just want to, before we get started, explain a little bit about the process by which all the audience members can participate. First request of everybody, please turn off your video to allow us to have better bandwidth. Second, it is live on Facebook, and you may or may not wish to be seen live on Facebook. So I would encourage you to turn off your video, except for the panelists who are presenting. Little bit of housekeeping. After I introduce the panelists, they will do their presentation. Any questions you wish to ask during the presentation, please post your question in the chat window and make sure you post that chat question either to me, the host for this event, Penny Sharon, or to everyone. It doesn't really matter, but you need to post your questions on the chat window. Another important item before we get started here introducing the panelists is that during this presentation, the panelists have come up with a number of wonderful questions that we will present to you all as a poll. And so therefore, I would ask that you pay attention, although there isn't a grade at the end of this event, you will feel better knowing that you have the right answers as you share this information. Based on whether the panelists agree to share the slideshows, I will be, the League of Women Voters of Arizona will be posting those slide presentations either on Facebook or through our Arizona League of Women Voters Arizona newsletter. So if you don't get our newsletter, become a member. It's always a plug that we want more members, and we would of course be delighted to then send you a the newsletter. Again, welcome to the League of Women Voters of Arizona virtual event presentation, and today's focus is water. Let me introduce our panelists. The first expert to speak to us is Ben Alteneder. Ben is the Chief Legislative Liaison for the Arizona Department of Water Resources. Ben is actually going to speak about legislation that was either passed or was planned or did not pass in this last legislative session. He has spent over 15 years in advocacy and government affairs and has served in various capacities at the state legislature. Arizona public agencies such as Game and Fish, state land departments. He now serves as the Chief Legislative Liaison for the Arizona Department of Water Resources, and serves as a board member for the oldest conservation organization in the state, the Arizona Wildlife Federation. Ben received his Bachelor of Science degree in political science with a focus in American public policy from ASU in Tempe. Welcome, Ben. Delighted that you're joining us. And we look forward to what you have to share with us. Our second presenter, who has been coordinating this effort with me, is Vineetha Kartha, manager of the Colorado River Section, Arizona Department of Water Resources. Vineetha has a number of questions for us to answer, and Vineetha comes to us with a chock full of data for us to digest as we listen to the presentation. Vineetha presented to the League of Women Voters in 2018 and at our legislative day. And so I'm delighted she's back again to tell us where we are with water resources in Arizona. She comes, as you can read, from an environmental planning background. She also has been involved in drought contingency planning, salinity control programs, the Glen Canyon Dam Adaptive Management Program. She holds a Master of Urban and Environmental Planning degree from ASU and a Master of Geology. Thank you, Vineetha, and we look forward to what you have to share with us. Natalie Mast, new to meeting you for the very first time, welcome and thank you so much. She's the program manager responsible for active management areas at the Arizona Department of Water Resources. She and her team are currently working to complete 4th management plans for Phoenix, which should matter to so many of us. Pinal, matter again to us, Santa Cruz, AMAs, and are concurrently leading a work group and stakeholder process for the development of the mandatory conservation program for the 5th management plans. And I know we'll hear more about that as she does her presentation. She is coordinating the data analysis and compilation activities for the AMA and as the coordinator for the Cochise planning area as part of the Arizona Water Initiative. Thank you so much, Natalie, for joining us, and we look forward to your presentation. And of course, we have Carol Ward, who's the Deputy Assistant Director of the Arizona Department of Water Resources. We thank you for giving us the time to join us, and we look forward to what you have to share from a broader perspectives. Carol is, of course, the Deputy Assistant Director of Planning and Permitting for the Arizona Department of Water Resources. She oversees the department's statewide strategic planning, groundwater permitting and wells in surface water permitting sections. And there was a number of legislation that were either considered or passed or did not pass in this area of groundwater permits. So it'll be very good to hear from you, Carol. Before joining the department, she served as Assistant Director for the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association. Her focus has been on water demand management and sustainability, and thank you for that effort. She's a former officer of the Board of Directors of the Alliance for Water Efficiency, a nonprofit association advancing the efficiency and sustainability of use of water across North America. She has participated in many in numerous regional and national water-related committees and work groups throughout her career. Welcome, Carol. Welcome, Natalie. Welcome, Vineetha, and welcome, Ben. And so we start by having Ben present first. And once Ben is done, Ben, as you know, cue me on the chat window so that I know when you want me to cue the polling, okay? All right, Ben, we'll turn it over to you. Vineetha, I think you're driving the slide car, right?
Yes, so if you
right.
allow me to share.
Then you're on, sir.
Penny, you need to allow me to share my screen, please.
Can you all hear me?
Ben, we can hear you.
Great. Vineetha, go ahead and share the slide. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the League for hosting us today. Thank you, Penny. My name again is Ben Alteneder, and I have the honor of serving as the Chief Legislative Liaison for the Arizona Department of Water Resources. Again, that's the agency that's tasked with managing the state's water resources, as you know, which is a precious resource here in Arizona. Perfect, there we go. All right, next slide. So in today's virtual session, I'm going to give a brief update on water legislation that is moving through the Arizona legislature. My shop is tracking over 175 bills. A significant number of them are water-related legislation. I'm going to cover the most high profile and those that will likely make it across the finish line. I'll give a brief update on what we might expect when the legislature reconvenes next week following their suspension due to COVID-19. And then lastly, I'll share a few tips on staying involved with the legislature and how to stay abreast of water legislation in the future. Let's go to the next slide. So as an executive agency, the governor's office sets our policy direction, as many of you know. We provide our analysis as to what the impacts of bills are, but as far as taking a position on legislation, we generally do not take positions and leave that to the governor's office to do once and if the legislation arrives at his desk. The first bill I'd like to note, just kind of as a side note and not in this presentation, is our agency's continuation bill. All agencies sunset and are automatically repealed in statute, usually every 10 or fewer years. ADWR was set to be repealed at the end of this year. However, our agency went through a sunset review process where the legislature took a look at our functions and how we are fulfilling our role, responsibility to the taxpayer. And ADWR received great marks, and of course, the agency received a vote of confidence and another 8-year extension of the agency. So you'll be hearing from us in the future. That legislation was recently signed by the governor. So let's get into some additional bills. The bill you're looking at is House Bill 2674, titled Water Substitute Acreage, and is sponsored by Representative Gail Griffin, who's a Republican from Southern Arizona. And it allows a person with rights to use water or retire irrigation acres and substitute for other acres within the same farm unit, only if the irrigated acres were damaged by floodwaters or are subject to a limiting condition due to that flood. The bill made it through the House and was heard in the initial Senate committee. However, the bill is unlikely to receive a final vote in the Senate when it reconvenes. Again, the intent of the legislation is to allow farmers to substitute acres if some acres become unusable due to flooding. The department does not have a position on that bill. Let's go to the next slide. House Bill 2675, another Representative Griffin bill, attempts to allow a person to file a conservation plan and not penalize you if you hold a water right and you want to stop diverting the water and keep it as an in-stream flow, but not abandon your claim to the water. So it requires a water conservation plan to designate a duration of up to 10 years. And then you can do subsequent notices to continue to file those for periods of up to additional 10 years. The bill is being put forward by a conservation organization, the Nature Conservancy. And again, it has passed the House and is unlikely to receive a final vote in the Senate after the Senate reconvenes next week. Let's go to the next bill. So House Bill 2880. As you know, there's been a significant effort by folks within the Pinal Active Management area to try to find solutions to address water resource shortfalls, especially due to groundwater pumping. So House Bill 2880, which was sponsored by Representative Roberts out of Pinal County, would allow entities to modify or renew their designations of assured water supply if the new application to modify or renew a designation of assured water supply or certificate is not seeking to increase the total groundwater demand. So if they're allotted a certain portion and they're not seeking to increase it, that's the intent of this bill, is trying to address issues where the initial designation or certificate of assured water supply is actually more than what is likely available. And rather than redoing all the homework on what is available, the bill would simply allow an entity to modify their plan and use less water. So again, the bill made it through the House and the initial committee in the Senate and is unlikely to be voted on when the Senate reconvenes. You're starting to see a pattern here. Next slide. So one other bill I would note that has got a lot of initial conversations and ultimately did not move out of committee was a set of bills that were sponsored by Representative Engel and Representative Cobb that in essence would establish a rural active management area to address concerns about out-of-state corporate farming entities that were setting up shop in rural Arizona and pumping a lot of groundwater. While those bills did not move this legislative session, it's likely that they will see a stakeholder process in the interim to address issues with the bills, and next session they will likely move forward in some fashion. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of those. And I have a little fact sheet on those that I can provide to Penny to make sure that you all receive. On the budget and agency funding, so the legislature left hurriedly due to the pandemic, and legislative leadership has announced just yesterday, in fact, that it will adjourn the legislature sine die next week. So several hundred bills are out there. Many of the ones that we just discussed, in fact, have been heard in committee, made it through most of the process. But as you know, when the legislature adjourns, those of course all die. With respect to agency funding, there was talk about funding ADWR to do some additional water studies in rural areas. Also funding for additional resources to do more work with respect to water claims and the adjudication process. So those are all in doubt as well. And the revenue projections for the state will not be available from this month of April until June. But obviously there will be a significant hole in the budget due to the pandemic. I will say on a positive note, there was projected to be a significant surplus this year. And the rainy day fund, as you know, has $1 billion in it. So as I noted, the legislature plans to adjourn sine die next week. There will be several special sessions that will likely happen, mostly around addressing the state's fiscal picture. My guess is that we won't see a special session until early to mid-June, which will give legislators time to look at the revenue numbers for this month of April. And at that point, there'll be a determination on whether there needs to be any budget adjustments to the current fiscal year or the next fiscal year. The current budget that is passed for next fiscal year simply is a continuation of the current spending from this fiscal year. Next slide. So I know the League is highly engaged and active, but there are those on our virtual session who probably not aware of some of the great citizen tools through the legislature's website that can be utilized to track bills as they move through the process, as well as engage with your elected representatives and voice your opinion. So the request to speak system, which can be accessed at azleg.gov, allows you to express your opinion and that of an organization to the legislature. Requires initially signing up in person at a kiosk in the lobby of the House or the Senate. And then following that initial sign-on, you can log in at home and note your support or opposition to legislation, which is a really neat tool. Additionally, I would invite each of you to sign up for my weekly legislative update. ADWR puts out during the legislative session that highlights the various bills we are tracking and notes if we have a position on them. You can do that by shooting me an email as noted there. And I'll also follow up with Penny to make sure that you have the information on how to get on that list. And always don't hesitate to reach out to me via email or Twitter if you have any questions on any of those bills. I'm happy to take any of those questions. And I will learn how to use this chat function here. But it's very important that we all, of course, engage in the legislative process. And so my polling question has to do with that engagement.
Then I'm ready to launch the poll. Everybody watch your screen. There should be a poll on your screen.
Great. So what percentage of Arizona's eligible voters are actually voted in the 2016 primary election? As you know, in Arizona, the primary is a significant election in which we get to elect those who will face each other in the general. There are over 7 million citizens in Arizona, 3.4 million eligible voters. And of those eligible voters,
Ben, please hold off. Folks are still answering the poll. And as soon as they are done, we have 19 out of 28, 67% have voted. So if you hold off, as soon as they have we get almost everybody voting, then we can, I will display the screen, okay?
Perfect. And no Googling.
Yeah, no Googling. Yeah, glad you said that. I forgot about, online, we have to be careful. They can't the answers, okay? We have 23 out of 27, which would give us 5 of us, okay? Okay. All right. We have 28 people on the call, 5 of us. Well, we have one person who hasn't yet. Okay, so we're there, folks.
Perfect. Well,
I'm going to end the poll and let me share the results, and then you can talk about the results, okay?
well, as I suspected, the league is right on it, and highly educated folks watching. So yes, 30%, it's actually 29% voted during the 2016 primary election. So if you think of that 7 million number that I mentioned of citizens in Arizona, 3.4 million eligible voters, and a little over 1 million people voted in the 2016 primary, which means that if you were one of those that voted, you represent 7 other people in Arizona when you cast your ballot. That's why it's important to vote. Those are the folks, of course, who will make it to the general, and likely in many cases, there is little to no opposition in a lot of these districts. So it's important that you cast your ballot. With that, I thank everyone, and I can answer any questions. And if not, I can turn it over to Vineetha.
Okay, so Ben, before we go to the next person, let's see if there are any questions in the chat. And while we do that, Vineetha, I believe you are next, so that'll give me a second to queue. Folks, please, if you have a question for Ben, can you put it in the chat window? Ben, are you going to be able to stay till the end? Because we usually do all our questions at the very end.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, folks, we are going to move on. Our next speaker is Vineetha Kartha, who is the manager. And Vineetha, thank you so much for doing this. You have it. Just let me know when you want me to launch each of your poll questions, okay? Thank you, folks. Before you get started, Vineetha, thank you all for taking the poll. Yeah, for participating. It's wonderful. I see so many of my wonderful league members here. So we are truly in league together on this. Thank you, everybody. Vineetha, turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Penny. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's 12. So, and thank you to the League of Women Voters of Arizona for having us. It is a great pleasure. And big thanks to Penny Shoren for organizing and guiding us through the logistics. My name, as Penny said, is Vineetha, and I manage the Colorado River section at the Department of Water Resources. I would like to start my presentation with a quote from Governor Ducey. He said, "The drought contingency plan is the most significant water legislation passed in nearly 40 years. The legislation that he's referring to from 40 years ago is the Groundwater Management Act, which is the cornerstone of water management in Arizona. The Groundwater Management Act is heralded as one of the best management actions across the world for water. The act had a big hand in reducing groundwater use in Arizona. The DCP is somewhat similar because it took a lot of collaborative and cooperative effort from the lower basin states of California, Nevada, and Arizona, from the upper Colorado River Basin states of Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, and Utah, and from federal agencies like the Bureau of Reclamation and from the Republic of Mexico. It also involved a lot of effort from stakeholders within Arizona. So what is DCP? If you're a resident of Arizona, you have likely driven across the Hoover Dam on State Route 93, or I think it's 93, on your way to Vegas. If so, you have probably seen the large white mark on the border of Lake Mead. We call it the bathtub ring. The DCP is really an effort to try and stop that bathtub ring from getting larger. As you may have heard, the Colorado River Basin has been in a drought for the past 2 decades. This has led to Lake Mead getting drained faster than usual. For us, for the state of Arizona, this has very significant impact. 40% of our state's Colorado River supplies come from the Colorado River, which is stored in Lake Mead. As a junior priority user, the state of Arizona also takes the deepest cuts if Lake Mead levels go down, way down. The DCP really tries to put in place actions that would try and prevent the lake from draining even further, or essentially preventing that bathtub ring from getting larger and larger. And we do that by conserving water and taking reductions earlier than anticipated. Vineetha, do you want to cue the first question? And I'm going to keep going.
Vineetha, the poll is up there. Do you want to read it to make sure? 11 out of 26 have voted.
Okay, no, I think that was fine. I actually passed it, so it's okay. Do you want me to keep going with the presentation or wait till the poll is done?
Yeah, I think you should wait so that they can, we have 20, 21, about 2 more, and then we should be ready to, there you go. Okay, I'm going to end the polling. Here's the answer.
Very nice, good job. Great, so I'll keep going. So in this slide, what you're seeing is what the state did along with the other basin states. So under the DCP, the state of Arizona committed to conserve more water and take a reduction earlier than accepted. And so we had to figure out a way to implement this reduction plan in the state in a way that was acceptable to Colorado River water users. The state and the Central Arizona Project launched a public steering committee in 2018 to wade through this process. A solution was formed late 2018, and that solution then morphed into legislation. The state of Arizona's legislature passed and Governor Ducey signed Senate Bill 1227 that authorized Director Tom Bushatsky to sign the DCP agreements on behalf of the state, and also to allow the implementation of the drought contingency plan in Arizona. Following the state action, federal legislation was passed on April 8, 2019, and President Trump signed the historic legislation on April 16. On May 20th, 2019, the basin states and the Department of Interior signed all the DCP agreements. I will, in my next slide, walk through the legislation that was passed last year. SB 1227, actually the legislature authorized 2 things. It authorized the DWR director to sign the DCP agreements on behalf of the state of Arizona. And SB 1227 had language necessary for DCP to be implemented in the state. So the SB 1227 established the System Conservation Fund. It has about $30 million that comes in from the general fund, and about $8 million that was contributed by Environmental Defense Fund. This fund allows the Colorado River Indian tribes to fallow lands and conserve around 150,000 acre-feet of water in Lake Mead in return for payment from the state from this particular fund. The bill also allowed the water bank to exchange credit between active management areas. Basically, for those cities that was willing to save water in Pinal County for the benefit of the Central Arizona agriculture, the water bank would provide them with credits in the Phoenix active management area. It also established the Groundwater and Irrigation Efficiency Fund to allow for irrigation districts that were hit the hardest from DCP to tap into funds to improve irrigation efficiency or to put in new wells. There was some additional language in SB 1227, which also allowed some entities to store affluent and to accrue credits for storing water for the benefit of affected irrigation districts. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, And in addition, they were, the director of ADWR was required to make certain updates to the legislature and the governor regarding the status of the DCP agreement. So these were all the agreements. These were all the agreements that were signed since the approval of the legislature, since Governor Ducey signed the legislature. There were about 16 agreements and several smaller ones. I am not going into detail about any of these at this time. I believe Penny is going to share this presentation with you all after this. If you have questions about any of this, you are welcome to reach out to me and talk to me regarding any of these agreements. The only agreement that is grayed out that has not been executed yet is the recovery agreement, because the water bank is yet to find a recovery partner in Pinal County. I'll stop there because Penny is about to start a poll.
It's on.
Thank you.
We have very good participants. They are answering these polls really fast. It's wonderful. All right. I believe that is the end of polling.
Nice, great, thank you. So it has exactly been a year after the DCP was signed and approved. So what has happened since then, and what have we learned? First of all, we learned that collaboration and cooperative efforts always work. In our state, in Arizona, we saw several parties engaged and providing a lending hand to ensure that the DCP went through. This included cities like Phoenix, Scottsdale, Chandler, Avondale. It also included tribes like the Gila River Indian Community and the Colorado River Indian tribes. It included water conservation districts like the Central Arizona Project or the Central Arizona Water Conservation District. And of course, a huge part of the effort came from the state of Arizona and the state legislature. Now, let's see if DCP worked. So for that, I would like to take you back to the past, to 2018. This was a model. What you're seeing on the screen was a result of a model that was run by the Bureau of Reclamation in 2018. It showed that the risk of Lake Mead's bathtub ring growing larger was almost 30%. We had never seen numbers like that prior to that year. This means that Lake Mead was poised to drain faster and faster, and the state would have been taking significant cuts to its water supplies. Fast forward to 2019, this model was run after the DCP was passed, and voila, the risk of Lake Mead's bathtub ring expanding was now down to 12%. The modeling has shown that DCP has worked in future projections. And it looks like Penny has started a poll, and I'll stop there. So Penny, are you, oh, great, nice. Thank you, perfect. So you all were right, DCP has really worked. The modeling from reclamation shows that DCP worked for future projections, and the risk of Lake Mead going down to critical elevations is much lower than it was before DCP was passed. I would like to leave you with this happy rainbow chart. This chart shows you the collaborative actions that have been taken by California, Nevada, Arizona, Reclamation, and Mexico over the years. Together, we have conserved enough water to prop up Lake Mead by 35 feet. That's pretty big, that's huge. If these actions had not been taken, Lake Mead would have been at elevation 1050, and that's a dashed line that you see below the rainbow. And at that level, we would have had to take a 14% cut to our Colorado River supplies. That's a huge impact to the state. This shows that collaborative actions have worked. Water conservation has worked. and storage and Lake Mead has worked. DCP has used those exact same tools to avert Lake Mead from falling even further below than it already is. This slide is primarily meant to allow the transition to our next presentation. Actually, Carol is going to speak a lot more in detail about the council. So I'll leave with my last slide as Penny is doing the poll, and I believe Natalie is going to take over from here onwards. And thank you all very much, and a very happy Earth Day to you. Continue to conserve water for us, please.
Okay, I can take over whenever we're done with that last poll, whenever we're ready. Great.
Natalie, you're on.
Okay, great.
You want me to launch question 1?
Oh, yes, we can go ahead and get started with question 1. Oh, whoops, I actually reordered them, but we'll go out of order. That works. That's totally fine. Yeah. That's okay. I changed the order of the question last minute, so that was
okay.
So people get to guess at some of my questions because I won't have covered them yet, but that's all right.
Do you want to tell me while they are filling out what's the sequence you want?
We can just go with what you have. I'll make it work. It's all right.
Okay.
So my name is Natalie Mast. I am the program manager working on the active management area management plans at ADWR. I'm going to be covering people know apparently when our Groundwater Management Act was passed. That's exciting. Good job, everyone. Maybe people are cheating and Googling a little bit. That's impressive though. So I'm going to be covering a number of things here today. Sorry, hang on just. If Vineetha or Carol, if you could go to the next slide, please. I'm going to be talking a little bit about groundwater management in Arizona and kind of the impact that groundwater management has had and the ways we think about groundwater in our active management areas. If you could go to the next slide, please. Vineetha talked a lot about the Colorado River and the different ways that we manage that. The Colorado River is about 40% of our water supply, and groundwater is another about 40% of that supply. So both of these are really important supplies of water to the state. Let's see, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So the 1980, good job everyone, the 1980 Groundwater Management Act was passed in order to try to control some areas of very severe groundwater depletion across the state. This act also created the Arizona Department of Water Resources and was intended to provide a means to help us manage those various supplies of water across Arizona. If you could go to the next slide, please. The Groundwater Management Act created a tiered regulatory structure for groundwater management in Arizona. So there are some, if you look kind of at the top portion of this, there are some provisions that apply statewide. All wells have to be registered. There are some requirements for adequate water supply and water systems. The next step above that, there are a few irrigation non-expansion areas in the state, where expansion of irrigation irrigated acres is prohibited, and they're required to report their water use each year to the department. The next step on top of that is the active management areas, which I'll be talking about most today, where that's kind of our highest level of water regulation in the state. So in the active management areas, in addition to these other requirements, we also have what's called assured water supply, or that 100-year guarantee of water supply that you hear about. And we have monitoring and reporting, but there's also withdrawal fees for groundwater users, and the statute established management goals, management plans, and conservation programs for your largest water users in those active management areas. So if we'll go to the next slide, please. So there are 5 active management areas across the state. And you can kind of see those on the map here. The 5 active management areas are Prescott, Phoenix, Pinal, Tucson, and the Santa Cruz active management area. Those don't follow county lines. These are actually drawn according to groundwater basin lines. So they're intended to follow hydrologic boundaries rather than kind of those political boundaries. The irrigation non-expansion areas, there are 3 of those: Harquahala, Joseph City, and Douglas INAs. I'm not going to get into the details of those today, but we'll talk some more about the AMAs instead. So if we'll move to the next slide, please.
Are you ready for a poll question, Natalie?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do the next poll question.
Okay, the one I have is about managing its groundwater supplies.
That works.
Okay. Folks, poll is out there, so please answer. Results on the screen, Natalie.
All right, kind of a mixed bag there. Definitely interesting. Well, maybe we can change your minds a little bit, or at least give you a little more information throughout the rest of the presentation today. So I talked about the active management areas. The statute established that each active management area should have a management plan. So these management plans, the statute indicates that there should be a series of 5 management plans for each active management area. And these management plans are to contain conservation programs for each sector, which are designed to reduce withdrawals of groundwater. So that's kind of the critical piece here. As I go further into the details, this is a really important piece, that reduction in withdrawals of groundwater that helps us successfully manage this groundwater and move toward the goals of each AMA. So if we could go to the next slide. So the statute's also established a goal for each active management area. 4 out of our 5 active management areas essentially have a safe yield type of goal, which means that AMA is supposed to be working toward achieving a long-term balance between the amount of water that's coming out of the aquifer and the amount of water that's going into the aquifer, either through natural recharge or other means. Whoops, if we could go back one more slide, please. Oh, we're going the wrong direction here. There we go. So 4 out of our 5 AMAs do have a safe yield type of goal, either to achieve or maintain safe yield. The Pinal AMA has a slightly different goal, which is to kind of extend the agricultural economy there as long as is feasible, but also to preserve water for future non-irrigation types of uses. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the conservation programs in the management plans are—
Natalie, would you like a poll at this point?
Oh, we'll do one right after this slide, I think.
Okay, great.
Thank you. So the conservation programs in the management that are written into the management plans are designed to, again, reduce withdrawals of groundwater. So these conservation programs are the part of the management plan that help each active management area move toward its goal. And that's a really important piece of these management plans. As we move through the series of 5 management plans, we want to also be progressing each AMA toward its goal. The conservation programs are detailed in the management plans. There is a conservation program for each of our major sectors. So agricultural, municipal, and industrial programs are written into these management plans, requiring various conservation and reporting measures for each of those largest water users in those sectors. And we can go ahead and go to the next slide and also do the next poll question.
Okay. Okay, poll is out there. 4 out of the 5 active management areas have a goal.
Okay.
We're almost there, Natalie. But you can go ahead and get started. So as soon as it's done, I will post it up.
Great. So what I'm going to cover next is, so we have all these structures in place. What has the impact of these structures been? If we could go on to the next slide, please. Ooh, can we get, oh, there it is. Okay. So this next slide.
Natalie, sharing the results right now before you explain this slide.
Yay, good. Good job. Yeah, the goal out of 4 out of those 5 active management areas is safe yield. That's correct. Great. So this slide has a chart that we at the department really like. What you can see, this is showing water use at a statewide level. And what you can see here is that our water use kind of peaked around 1980. And that coincidentally is when the Arizona Department of Water Resources was created. So you can see that this water management across the state has really had a noticeable impact, that our water use has actually decreased over a time period where we have had very significant population growth and we've had very significant economic growth in this state. So this is really kind of a testament of the success to these water management policies across the state. If we could go to the next slide, please. So more specific to the active management areas where these management plans are in effect, the role of the management plans in water management is kind of focused on these most populated areas that the active management areas cover. So there's, over the series of the 5 management plans, we have an incremental tightening of successive of the conservation requirements under successive plans in order to reduce withdrawals of groundwater. And what we can see in the example of the Tucson AMA that I have on this chart, so this chart shows overdraft over time, and those top red bars show water coming out of the aquifer. Those blue bars on the bottom show water going into the aquifer. So the closer that black line, which is the balance between those two things, the closer that black line gets to 0, the closer that aquifer is to being balanced. So you can see that in the example of the Tucson AMA, we've had reasonably good success in terms of balancing those inflows and outflows. We can go ahead and move to the next slide and maybe also do, I think we're on the last question or the 3rd question. I've lost count already.
Yeah, it's the last question.
Perfect. Okay, and while we're voting, I'll go ahead and run through these. I'll kind of introduce this next section. So what I'm going to talk about now is where are we at with the management plans? I talked about how the statute indicated there should be a series of 5 management plans for each active management area. The statute also indicated that the 4th management period should be 2010 through 2020, and the 5th management period should be 2020 through 2025. We, due to a lot of reasons, are pretty far behind on those management plans. And if we want to move to the next slide, I can show a timeline of how we're trying to do a little bit of a course correction and improve upon that. So over the last year, we have been looking at these 4th and 5th management plans and working to create plans for adopting the remaining 4th management plans and develop the 5th management plans. So the Prescott and Tucson active management areas already adopted their 4th management plans. And as of last year, we still needed to complete the Phoenix, Pinal, and Santa Cruz active management area 4th management plans. I'm very proud to say that as of this past month, this month, we have completed the adoption of the Phoenix active management area 4th management plan. So that's a really exciting accomplishment. And we intend to complete the adoptions for the Pinal and Santa Cruz AMA 4th management plans within this calendar year, within 2020. So we're moving very quickly on trying to complete those remaining 4th management plans. At the same time, we have started a stakeholder group to do some outreach and development and research associated with the 5th management plans. And we're calling that the Management Plans Work Group, or the MPWG, as you can see on that bottom portion of the timeline. This whole timeline is a little bit more tentative than it maybe previously was, maybe due to obvious reasons here. But we are holding a broad series of stakeholder meetings in order to develop these 5th management plans and kind of get the stakeholder feedback that we need in order to create those plans. We intend tentatively to spend 2021 drafting those plans, actually writing those documents, and then spend 2022 adopting those plans. If we want to move to the next slide, please. So that Management Plans Work Group, again, is responsible for kind of the stakeholder outreach necessary to develop the 5th management plans. This is an extensive series of meetings, open to the public, open to all who are interested in participating, with goals of looking at the existing conservation programs in the previous management plans, updating those management strategies, and developing new management strategies to take us into the 5th management plans, the 5th management period, and beyond. In order to, we are engaging a broad range of stakeholders in order to do this, and we're working closely with the regulated community in order to make sure that what we're building here can both take us into the future and is kind of checking that box of reducing withdrawals of groundwater, but also makes sense for that regulated community and is something that's functional for them to implement. If we could go to the next slide, please. This group has broken into subgroups because there's a lot of detail and a lot of nuance associated with these conversations. So we've created subgroups for each sector, a subgroup to assess safe yield and how we measure those management goals. And we are really getting into a lot of deep and difficult and interesting conversations in these meetings and throughout this process. I do have dates for our upcoming meetings on this slide, but all of the previous and upcoming meeting information for that group is available on our website. And you can see the link at the bottom of that slide there. all of these meetings, again, are open to the public. We want to have participation from the public, from the regulated community, in order to really create something here that makes sense and is able to take us into the future. So with that, that's the last bit of my presentation. We can go to the next slide. So my contact information is up, but I'd be glad to take any questions at the end and through the chat box.
I just shared the results. So you want to speak to the last question?
Whoops, I accidentally just closed it.
Okay, so it says, how secure are the water supplies in our active management area? 25% said very, 70% said sort of, and 5% said not very. We had a total of 20 answering the poll.
Great. So I think that's an interesting response, and that's a fair response. We have made really good progress with our water management in the past, but we also have more work to do. So I hope we can get some. We've had really good participation in the development of the fifth management plans. We'd love to have more people participate in that process. So I hope that through that process we can maybe shift the needle on that a little bit and create that next generation of wise water management for the state.
Thank you, Natalie. I think we are now with our last presenter, Carol Ward, and please, questions coming. Would appreciate your joining us. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with all of you. Vineetha's adjusting me. Thanks, Vineetha. So today I'm going to provide you with an overview of the Governor's Water Council, its composition, purpose, how it operates, and its work to date. And Penny, why don't we start off with that first poll question to get us going?
Of course. There's an echo. Do you have, Vineetha? Can you adjust that echo? There's sort of a little bit of an echo from your laptop or computer. Do you have two computers next to each other that you're working with?
We don't.
Oh, okay. There's an echo, but it's okay, as long as people can hear you. All right, so the polling, we have 19 out of 27 who voted, so 20, and that's about what we have going on. So I'm going to end the polling so you can speak to the results.
So 65% have actually heard of the Governor's Water Council already. That's pretty good. Right, thanks. I was curious about that. Let's get started. So the council story begins with the drought contingency plan, where Vineetha left off. Addressing the risk of critical shortage on the Colorado River was necessarily the greatest focus of Arizona's water managers in the years leading up to the plan's signing. Important as it is, the Colorado River isn't Arizona's only water concern. There's more work to be done to address the state's water issues. In recognition of that fact, the Governor's Water Augmentation, Innovation, and Conservation Council was established by Executive Order 2019-02 on January 31st, 2019, concurrent with the historic signing of the legislation ratifying the drought contingency plan. The new council replaces the Governor's Water Augmentation Council, established in 2015. It expands on the foundation laid by the preceding council, increasing the focus of its efforts and further strengthening engagement. The council is a forum for discussion of water issues. It brings together a diverse group of stakeholders from across the state to raise, analyze, discuss, and vet what are often difficult, complex issues in an effort to ensure a sustainable water future. In doing so, it builds greater understanding, not only of the water resource challenges and the potential solutions, but also greater understanding and appreciation among the stakeholders, elected leaders, and government agencies of one another's perspectives on these issues. The Council continues the legacy of cooperative, long-term strategic water planning in Arizona. Through the Council and its committees, stakeholders from across the water use sectors are encouraged to confront difficult issues and to work collaboratively to identify and develop solutions to water challenges faced by communities throughout the state. The Council is charged with a number of things, most significantly, identifying and recommending opportunities for water augmentation, innovation, and conservation. The Council is also tasked with providing guidance on issues to the Director of ADWR upon the Director's request. The Council consists of individuals appointed by the Governor who serve at the pleasure of the Governor. These individuals come from a diversity of organizations and backgrounds, including watershed groups, government, nonprofits, academia, and Arizona agriculture, mining, and home building. Members of the former Council were retained. The Council was expanded to include several additional members. In order to enable the discussions that need to occur among diverse stakeholders and legislators to achieve good policy outcomes, several members of the Arizona State Legislature were specifically added to the Council by executive order. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, the President of the Senate, the House Minority Leader, and the Senate Minority Leader. They, their designees, and other elected leaders representing local and tribal governments from across the state have been supportive and active participants in the Council and its committees. Staff from Senator Sinema's office regularly attends meetings of the Council and committees as well. The Director of the Arizona Department of Water Resources serves as the chair of the Council. The Council's committees, where much of the work of the Council's is accomplished, includes Council members as well as non-Council members. Participation in the committee meetings is open to the public. There is no formal membership. Committee meetings to date have been held both in person and online to enable participation from stakeholders across the state. The committees work to identify and discuss issues and to develop, evaluate, and prioritize recommendations for the Council to consider. There are currently 4 committees. I'll touch briefly on each of them and what they have accomplished this past year. And Penny, this is probably a good time to launch another poll question.
While we wait for the poll question, Vineetha, if you're hearing, there's an echo. I noticed that if you could try to figure out how to maybe mitigate that so that it doesn't cause a background noise when as it broadcasts on Facebook. Just check and see if there's something you can do about it. Not sure.
Haven't changed anything on our end, which is what's strange.
Yeah, not sure if that echo is what the echo is. All right, we'll do what we can.
Let me see, I'm gonna mute and unmute.
Yeah, it is. I thought it might be somebody else, but. Okay, I'm sharing the poll results, Carol. 22 people, 100% believe it's critical.
Nice, I'm glad to hear that. We certainly believe so here at the department, for sure. And I think I said, did I say January of 2019, Vineetha? Okay. I was just making sure that I had my data in there correctly. Thank you. All right, thanks for everyone for answering that poll question and for affirming what we believe. All right, moving along here. So getting back to our committees, I'm going to start with the Long-Term Water Augmentation Committee. Does that sound any better, Penny?
It's okay. Let's just keep going. Not to worry. Not to worry.
So the purpose of the Long-Term Water Augmentation Committee is to identify and explore methods of augmenting water supplies in Arizona. The committee's report, Long-Term Water Augmentation Options for Arizona, presents a suite of potential options that are tailored to each of Arizona's 22 planning areas that local communities can use as a starting point as they consider solutions that could fit the challenges and opportunities within their respective planning areas. The committee continues to consider and potentially develop additional options for augmentation. In January 2020, a technical working group, the Water Storage Sites Criteria Subcommittee, was formed to recommend site selection criteria for the revision of the 2017 Potential Water Storage Sites on State Trust Land Report. You begin to get the feeling we don't do anything with a short title. Okay, moving on to the Desalination Committee. This committee works to evaluate and overcome barriers to desalination projects and to identify opportunities to assist in developing potential projects. In the latter half of 2019, the committee created the Desalination Regulatory and Legal Subcommittee as a technical group to identify and further examine issues in selected areas. Over the course of the past year, the committee has largely focused on the exploration and discussion of the challenges and opportunities involved in the use and desalination of brackish groundwater. At the committee's request, DWR staff compiled a brief overview of permitting requirements for waste brine disposal for stakeholders. The committee is also considering information on the Yuma desalting plant and the benefits to Central Arizona's Colorado River supply from operation of the plant. Moving on to the post-2025 Active Management Areas Committee. This committee is focused on identifying challenges within Arizona's active management areas and generating strategies and solutions for beyond the year 2025. The committee began the work of identifying challenges in October of 2019 and will continue the process of issue identification and analysis throughout 2020. The committee plans to have a consensus-based list of issues, each described in an issue brief, to bring to the council for consideration and discussion no later than December 2020, the December 2020 council meeting. In 2021, work will begin to develop solutions and strategies to address the agreed upon issues. The committee has drafted the first 3 issue briefs and will discuss them at an online meeting in May. In order to visually present data across the AMAs and sectors and actively compare them, ADWR staff created an online dashboard that is now a tool available to stakeholders. The non-AMA Groundwater Committee was established to address groundwater issues outside of the active management areas. Committee participants identified issues and concerns relating to groundwater use as topics for discussion. They have tentatively narrowed that list to 4 categories of topics and issues for further discussion: groundwater management strategies, data needs, best management practices and education, and well monitoring or measuring and reporting. At the last meeting of the council, the committee was given direction to make the discussion of irrigation non-expansion areas, or INAs, their next topic of discussion. A full listing of the topics that have been identified is available on the council's page on the DWR website. And for all of our committees, the agendas, materials, presentations, recordings, and summaries of the meetings can be viewed on the council's webpage on the DWR website. And Penny, maybe before we continue on with the council activities, we can queue up another poll question.
Oh, you can do that.
Right, we have a poll, and here's the results. Right, what's the future for groundwater? So there's your answer, Carol.
Okay, 65% said not so good. Well, and I would say that that really depends on where you are in Arizona. It varies considerably. And it will also depend on, I think, on what action we're willing to take moving forward, whether we're willing to continue to be proactive and in managing our supplies. So moving forward with our presentation. Council activities for this past inaugural year. The council, advance here a little bit. The council meets quarterly. Meetings of the council to date have been held both in person and online to enable council members to participate remotely and to encourage public attendance. Meeting agendas and materials, presentations, recordings, and summaries like those of the committees are posted to the council page on the DWR website. In addition to the work of the committees, the council was kept informed regarding the department's ongoing work to complete the 4th management plans and to develop the 5th management plans. Natalie has been a regular presenter at the meetings. The council was apprised of the Pinal AMA assured water supply physical availability issues and the stakeholder process that's going on to deal with those. The council requested and was provided information on surface water adjudications and safe yield, requested the opportunity to discuss tribal water rights settlements. And this was a process that began with a background presentation at the last March 13th meeting. The council received a final report on the 2nd phase of Arizona's distribution system water loss control technical assistance program pilot. Both phases of that pilot program were initiated under the recommendation of the previous council. The council provided input at the director's request regarding paths to complete the remaining 4th management plans. The council considered the department's strategies for communicating the state's water supply resiliency as well. So the council made notable progress in its inaugural year. Most significantly, the council established the post-2025 Active Management Areas Committee and the Non-Active Management Area Groundwater Committee, and those committees began their work. Both of these committees will be the locus of much of the council's work in the year to come. Although the two groups have significant fundamental differences, both are tasked with the crucially important work of developing potential solutions and recommendations to groundwater challenges, and both have a difficult process ahead of them. It could be easier to kick the can down the road, to let someone else do the work, and to take a pass on the hard decisions. but the time to do this work is now. Most of the AMAs won't meet their goals by 2025. The framers of the code didn't expect that they necessarily would, at least not in the Phoenix AMA. 2025 was a point to reassess. The framers of the code knew the world would change. Pressures on our supplies would increase, but we would also know much more about water management after 40 years. So, given what we know and what we have learned, how will we meet the challenges that lie ahead of us? How do we ensure groundwater is sustainable for the future? What strategies and policy solutions will be necessary? That is the work of the post-2025 AMAs committee. Looking outside the AMAs, 20% of the state's population, nearly 1.5 million people, live outside of Arizona's AMAs and INAs, and a large portion of them rely on groundwater. For some communities, groundwater is the sole source of supply. 31 out of 46 groundwater basins in the state rely on groundwater for more than 75% of their water supply. Outside of the regulated areas, the state's population is increasing at the same rapid pace as it is inside the AMAs and the INAs, and agricultural production in these areas is expanding. This sets the stage for the discussions that the non-AMA Groundwater Committee is undertaking as they explore issues and ideas in the context of communities that are significantly distinct from those of central Arizona. So the March 2020 meeting of the council marked the last public meeting the Department of Water Resources hosted before suspending meetings due to the COVID-19 outbreak. This week, we began hosting large stakeholder meetings via webinar exclusively. Staff and the stakeholders we work with will be adapting to a new normal and moving forward with the work of the committees and the council in the near future. The next post-2025 AMAs committee meeting will be held in late May. If you would like to learn more about these committees and the council, or if you would like to be added to our contact list, please visit the council web pages at azwater.gov. And if you have any questions, we would be happy to answer them. And Penny, I might have one more poll question, I'm not sure.
You have two, Carol. Should I just do both?
Sure.
Okay, so here are last two questions, folks. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. A bunch of questions on the chat box, so I will start bringing those up for everybody. Okay, a few more seconds to this question. The question on the table is, would concerns about water availability ever affect your willingness to buy a home in Arizona? I guess some of us have been here so long that I don't know that we're moving out, right? Unless we're totally in a drought. So, okay, we have 17 out of 22, 18. We'll wait for a couple more folks and all right, there you go. Sharing the results, Carol.
Okay, 78% said yes. They would affect the willingness to buy a home. That would make sense.
Okay, the last question from you, Carol, is, will Arizona continue to grow? Which is an interesting question, isn't it, considering where we are today with the crisis? All right, we have about 14 people, a few more. We should be ready to call that question closed. Okay, here's the results.
Well, it's a resounding yes.
Yes. All right, Vineetha, if you will stop the sharing of your screen, I will move over to the questions, the chat window. And we can take, starting with the very first set of questions that were asked. So the first question that was asked was, what is the disparity between mega and small farm and ranch operations and their access to water? What percentage of large operations are from out of state or even international?
Seems like a Natalie question.
Seems like a Natalie.
Yeah.
So this is Ben. I provided a reply, but there may be others on the call who are have more information than I do on this. But it largely depends on the financial resources to access water, if it's groundwater. If you're within an AMA or outside of an AMA or in an INA, there may be impacts on how much groundwater you can access. And then with respect to surface water, of course, you have to have the rights associated with that. So it's a pretty, there's a lot of variables involved in answering that question. And then as far as, you know, how many of those are owned by foreign agents, that's largely a guess as well, just due to the ability of companies to set up local LLCs and to play that shell game. But we can look into finding some more data on that.
Okay, next question. To what extent did the DCP take into account both projected population growth in AZ and scientifically valid climate change?
So thank you for that question. That is a really, really good question. So the model that we use for Colorado River is called the Colorado River Simulation System. So what that does is it takes into account the supplies that's available for the river based on hydrology from 1906 all the way to 2017. So we kind of understand the historic hydrology that we have been faced with so far. And we use that hydrology and try to emulate it for the next few years. And in that same model, what we also have is demand in the upper basin as well as the lower basin. So in 2007, when the states were negotiating the interim guidelines, we had provided them with the population projections for the state of Arizona. And we had done some projections, especially for the main stem and how M&I or the municipal and industrial growth may outpace the agricultural growth and so on. So yes, the CRSS and the Colorado River modeling takes into account population projections or population growth, not only in the state of Arizona, but also all of the lower basin states and the upper basin states. And it's already inside the model. So yes, the answer is DCP does take into account that particular issue. With regards to climate change, we do take into consideration CMIP 5 or CMIP 3. I'm not sure which version of the global climate model we use, but we do run scenarios with that. We also, instead of just using the climate change, we also use the driest scenarios that we have seen in the past, which is the last 30 years, almost like from 1988 all the way to 2017. These were the driest period on record in the past 100 years. So we use that and use that as a proxy for climate change. So it's called the stress test hydrology. So we do both. We do have a global climate model that we look at, and we also have a proxy for climate change. So certainly we look at both of those. I hope that answered your question.
There is another, we are at 1 o'clock, so I'm going to take just 2 more questions because we are to end it at 1. The next question I'm going to ask is there a way to see which groups' interests all the members of the council represent?
I'm trying to think if there is an easy way to do that. I don't believe there is. The folks were really put on the council to serve as individuals, not really as to represent specific interests. So I'm not sure that it's compiled easily that way anywhere. I would have to look.
The next question has to do with, does the council confer with the Corporation Commission or coordinate or collaborate with the Corporation Commission?
They are, I'm trying to think if there's someone that regularly attends from Corporation Commission. I can't think of that right off the top of my head, but they're certainly informed of our efforts as a sister agency. I think they're well aware. I'd have to look and see if they're actually a regular attendee or not. I can't think of that right now.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Carol, this last question was in your slide at the very end. We believe a number of folks have written that you gave some very informative statistics, but there were no slides associated with the numbers you called out. Could you add that slide, please, and share with us since we weren't taking copious notes because we were counting on the slides?
Okay, I wasn't sure if they didn't know if this was a group that liked that kind of a slide or not, but sure, I assume you meant the groundwater statistics. I can do that.
Yes, I think that would be of real interest to everybody.
Yeah, I can add that in.
So much. Folks, it's 1:04 and we like to finish these on time. So I would like to, on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Arizona and many of the members who have joined this call and members of the community who've joined this call, thank you all for being very patient through the technology and through this very, very, very important discussion of that precious commodity water of which we are all so dependent. I want to be able to say to you all, come back again soon, and hopefully at some point we'll hear more about where we are. Ben, thank you for giving us that legislative update. I do hope they sine die for many reasons. And Natalie, thank you for sharing the work that you are doing. Vineetha, thank you for coordinating this. And Carol, thank you for providing the leadership you are providing in the information you gave us on the council. Everybody on this call, thank you so much for giving up your lunch hour on a weekday to join us. We had planned a second session for Friday. We did not get enough people to register, so we canceled that session. But this recording is live on Facebook. If there are questions on Facebook, certainly please go look at it. Our Facebook page is LWVAZ. If you go to our Facebook page, please share widely the last series of presentations. We had about 400 plus people listen to these presentations. And we know that what you have to tell us is so important for all of us in Arizona. Thank you, everybody from the Arizona Water Resources. Thank you, Ben, Natalie, Vineetha, and Carol. Everybody have a wonderful week. We'll see you all again in May. We have 2 new sessions in May, one on the ER campaign and the other will be on redistricting. So please do join us. Thank you all.